a number of years ago, I was going through a really hard time in my life. And I started reading a bunch of romance and discovered that romance is the perfect thing to read when life is difficult. Because, like, going in, there's going to be that happy ending. And, like,
The
that
library was my space, and there was just so much.
To the Harbor Grace excursion with the boys to have a time.
Hello, everyone.
Look at all these people that came in.
it's so
I'm
exciting.
so excited. Thank you all for coming. My name is Farah Heron, and I am so super thrilled, honored, excited, and all of those words, excited to be here to interview the amazing Jasmine Guillory. I'm just going to put my thing here so I don't lose track of time. So we're here to talk to Jasmine about her newest book, Drunk on Love. And I'm going to get my notes out. So, for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to read Drunk on Love yet, Jasmine, did you want to just give us a little, like, your blurb, your little tiny primer on what this book is about?
Yeah, so Drunk on Love is about Margot and Luke. Margot is the co-owner of her small family winery in Napa Valley with her brother Elliot. She goes away on a business trip. She comes home, she is having dinner at her best friend's bar, and she gets to talking to the guy sitting next to her, Luke. They have a nice conversation, they go back to his place, they have a great one-night stand, or so Margot thinks, until she gets to work the next morning and discovers that Luke is the newest employee at her winery, hired by her brother when she was out of town. And so now she has to deal with the aftermath of being the boss of her one-night stand, and what happens to their relationship is the rest of the book.
I absolutely love that, like, disastrous meet cute in a rom-com. When I went through a rom-com course once, and they called it a meet disaster instead of a meet cute. And it's always something like, oh, no. It's never like, oh, he bought me a coffee.
Yeah.
Love that. So I absolutely love the characters in Drunk on Love. Margot is, like, the perfect, confident, brilliant. She's like just the exact businesswoman. Like, you wrote her so well. But she has some real vulnerability underneath that, like, boss babe persona. And then Luke, he's charming, he's easygoing. What I loved about him was that he was adaptable, and he was so incredibly supportive of all the people he loved. So where did these characters come from for you? Who or what inspired them?
I think a lot of Margot came once I kind of figured out the setting. Because the first thing I knew about this book was that it was going to be set in Napa Valley. And then as soon as I knew that, I was like, oh, well, it's obviously going to be set at a small family winery, because, like, that feels like there's going to be a lot of drama there, and I love family drama. Like, I find it very fun to read about and write about. So then once I knew that, I was sort of figuring out, like, okay, what is her role in the winery? Who is the family involved? And so once I knew it was just her and her brother, then that helped me kind of figure out, like, why do they own the winery in the first place? What are her feelings about it? And that taught me a lot about Margot's character. And so that was really what came first. And then Luke, I knew that he was moving back to Napa, that he had grown up there, had been gone, and was moving back. But I was trying to figure out, like, well, why would he move? Why did he go away? Why did he move back? What is happening with Luke? And so sort of figuring out some of his background, what he came back for, what is going on in his life, sort of led me to him and to why they would care about each other. Like, because I think one of the key questions for me in writing any romance is, what is it about this person that would make the other person fall in love with them, and vice versa? Yeah. And so I really have to, like, figure that out it's often in the course of my first draft that I'm kind of figuring that out, and seeing how these two characters would come together, and so that teaches me a lot about them.
Yeah, it's like the cliche, like, you complete me, but It really is that you need that kind of, like, the person whose puzzle fits that piece.
Right, and right? Sometimes it's that two people are very similar, and so they work well together, and sometimes it's that they're, like, kind of opposites in many ways, but they fit well. And so I think figuring out sort of those pieces of each of their characters is kind of the most important thing for me in a first draft.
So there's no creating a character in a bubble. You're not creating this person and this person. It's all figuring out how they complement each other.
Yeah, because otherwise the story wouldn't make sense, because it really, at core it's a romance, and so I want to know, like, how what is it about these two that draws them together, and what kind of conflicts do they have? What kind of conversations do they have? You know, what is it about each of them individually and together that I like to write about?
What surprised you the most about writing this book?
You know, this book definitely went in directions that I didn't expect to. There's definitely a lot more about work in this book than I meant for there to be. And I think part of that is just like, you know, I was writing it over like in 2021 and 2022 when I think we were all thinking about our relationship with work and how, like, what kind of attachment we have to it, how much of our lives we should devote to it. And so I think that all sort of came out in this book in a way that I had not gone into it intending to write.
Yeah, there was a whole undercurrent of like, where do we want to be putting our energy right now? Is this what we want to put our energy into, or is this? Which I thought was great. That's interesting that's what surprised you. Maybe you were working out some
I'm
deep
sure it was.
feelings that you didn't realize.
I feel like that happens in every book.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us were kind of working out those, like, I mean, there's been a lot of turmoil in the last few years, and it's kind of we've had to really reestablish what we think is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you kind of answered my next question a little bit, which was going to be, did the characters or the setting come first? So you said the setting came first. I absolutely love the setting in this book. It really does feel like a character in itself.
Oh, thank you.
So I've never been, I mentioned to you earlier today, I've never been to California, but I felt like I was there with the restaurants and the winery in Napa, and I really want to go there now. So I'm going to send
come visit.
Yeah.
Because I live about an hour away from Napa Valley, so I'm there frequently. So if you come, I will have a whole spreadsheet to give you suggestions.
Perfect. I'm looking forward to this so much.
One time, actually, it's funny. I made the spreadsheet one time when you will, I think, relate to this. I was stressing about something in publishing. I don't even remember what it was, but I was like, this is what I will do. I will go through all of the wineries I've ever been to and make a spreadsheet about it. And it was very soothing.
Authors love spreadsheets.
Yeah, I have a lot.
do.
It's true. I have many.
We spend too much time on the computer. So like I said, I asked you about, I wanted to know if the setting or the characters came first, and you said the setting came first. Do you always work that way, where the setting comes first?
Not at all. This, I think, was the first time that happened in a book. Usually it's like either characters or kind of a situation come first. And so, you know, sometimes there's like a scene that comes to my head first, and I kind of write the book around that. This time, once I knew the setting and once I knew a little bit about the characters, there were definitely a few scenes that like came to my head that kind of were the bones of the book for me. But this was really the first time that the setting was like the first thing I knew about the book.
It was the first thing you came to. Okay. So you also mentioned a little bit earlier about the family dynamics of the family winery, and there's family dynamics in both of there, like interesting family, complicated, I'd say, family dynamics in both characters. I love the full backstories, and I like that it went deep into those family relationships, despite it being, I mean, I use the word fluffy, but it's a lighthearted romance.
Yeah.
It's a romance first, and it's a fun one. So Luke's past experience in the corporate world really stuck out for me, and I think that could have been a whole book. You could have written a whole book of everything that happened in Luke's life before.
Yeah, but that wouldn't have been a romance.
That wouldn't have been a romance, no.
That would not have been as fun to write.
No, it wouldn't have been as fun to write. It'd be very
Somebody is writing that
fascinating.
book, I'm sure. But.
Yeah. So why do you feel it's important to add those kind of like deep backstories and serious topics in fluffy books?
You know, a few things. I think in figuring out character, right? Because I think especially all like novels that are really about, I mean, all novels are about people, but like especially novels that are about like, you know, people and their relationships, right? Like a romance. For me, the character is the most important thing. Like I need to really know who they are. And so there is a, like, I want the audience to, the readers to also know who these people are, why they came to certain things, like why they've made certain decisions in their lives. Because sometimes in books, people will make stupid decisions and you're like, why are they making that stupid decision? But like, we've all made stupid decisions in our lives, and a lot of times those are because something happened in my past that I'm like, oh, well, I shouldn't do that because this terrible thing will happen again, even though it makes no sense to anyone else, right? And so I want people to at least understand why, like, oh, he's making that stupid decision. I get it, but that's still stupid, Or on the other side, like, why the characters are drawn to one another. Sometimes that's because of things in their past, or they can relate to each other in those ways. And so I think it's really important, both for me to know those things and for the readers to know some of it too. I mean, there's often I often leave out a lot of stuff, like my first drafts are very long and rambly, and then I sort of figure out the most important stuff. But I think it's really, and it also makes the character more interesting, right? Sometimes I read a book and sort of some people seem too perfect, and I'm like, well, but that's boring, right?
That's not realistic.
Yeah, not realistic, kind of boring. Like, you want people to have both strengths and weaknesses and feel like real people, because they don't feel like real people if it's all just sort of like picture perfect.
Yeah, and it's a balancing act to create a character. I always say that the reader needs to fall in love with the characters as they're falling in love with each other.
Absolutely.
Because if the reader doesn't fall in love with them, they're not going to feel all those feelings of euphoria. I mean, that's why you read romance, right? Because you feel it. You feel the euphoria of falling in love with the characters.
Right, and I want because people always ask me, like, did you, is there a specific character that you fell in love with? And for me, I always, fall in love with the couple as a unit. Yeah. And so I want people to be cheering for them as I'm cheering for them, right? And so I want people to know, if they have conflict, to understand why each of them is coming from where they're coming from.
Yeah, of course we have to fall in love with our characters.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're engrossed in when you're drafting, you're working on a book like that. Those characters are your life.
Exactly.
They may as well be there at the dinner table. I'm going to pull up a couple of chairs for my couple.
100%.
Yeah, they may as well be there. They're completely.
The other day, I was actually thinking about something happened, and I was thinking when did this happen to me? And I was like, oh no, that never happened to me. That happened to somebody I wrote. The character that
wasn't a real person. But then when you're, I don't know if it's the same for you, but when I'm done the book and it's now on shelves and it's not in my mind anymore, then it's like, oh, I used to have that friend.
Yeah.
It's an old friend. They're no longer in my life. Yeah. Somebody I went to college with.
How are they doing? Yeah.
Oh, it's so nice to see you again.
Yeah.
Totally. I totally get that. So one of my all-time favorite things to write about in my books is food. I love writing about food. I love grounding a story in food and having the characters discover more about each other through food. Mostly because I really like eating food.
Same.
Mostly.
Also me.
Yeah,
yes.
I love it. So I was delighted and also very, very hungry when reading Drunk on Love. Why do you think food is such an irresistible addition to romance?
I mean, for me, partly it's because I love to eat food, and I also like to feed people.
Yes.
Right? I love cooking for people. I love sort of having, dinners with friends and family. I feel like a lot of my most important memories are around a dinner table, And I'm also interested in what people like to eat and how they eat, right? It's are they people who are sharers or not? Or do they really love breakfast? Or do they have a sweet tooth? I feel like all those little things tell you stuff about people. Yeah. But also when I'm reading a book and it talks about people going out to dinner and then they talk about something and then they leave and I'm like, well, but what did they eat, though? What did they have for dinner? So I always make sure to tell people what they eat.
Not just what they eat, but what did they think of it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Did they like that?
I want to know. Was that good? Should I try that? And I think you're right. As you can tell, I mean, before I started writing, I would often, of course, I surround myself with people that also love food because then we have things to talk about and things to do together. And I could learn a lot about my friends by what they were willing to eat, how adventurous they were. So you do learn a lot about people by their eating habits.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and of course feeding and community and any community has their own feeding rituals. And I love getting a kind of a hint into what kind of a community is when you read about them in the way the books are.
Yeah, and I also find that super interesting when they come from like different the main characters come from different communities, because they're sort of introducing one another into like, this is how we eat in my family, and I find that really interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And it makes me hungry.
Yeah.
With my books, I always feel like there's like a canon, like a theme food for each of my books. So for like my recent book, Camila Knows Best, it was biryani, was like that was the food. And then for Accidentally Engaged, it was sourdough bread. So for you, what do you think? What was the food for Drunken Love?
This was a very carbohydrate-heavy book, I would say.
Yeah, lots of pasta.
Yeah, lots of pasta.
Lots of pasta.
Yeah.
Pasta and wine.
Yeah, wine, of course, but yeah, I would say a lot of pasta.
Yeah. Some really good
Yeah.
pastas. I'm trying to remember if there was any point where they cooked together. I don't think so. She cooked for him.
She cooked for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
There was no cooking together. If they come together for a sequel,
Yeah.
they can make pasta together.
Good idea. Yeah.
We could call it Drunk on Pasta. Okay, so I did a tiny bit of like reading up a bit about you beforehand, just so I would know what to say. And one thing I found that was really interesting is that you and I kind of came into writing romance the same way. So, it was through reading a crap ton, like an ungodly amount of romance, before saying, you know what, maybe I can try writing one of these things. So why did you choose to read so much romance then? And then how did it lead to writing it?
Yeah, I had like sort of read a little bit of romance here and there kind of throughout my life. I had a roommate in like summer camp one year when I was a teenager who brought a ton of romance that summer, and I read some, but my mom never read romance, and I always read a lot of like books that my mom had, so it never stuck. And then a number of years ago, I was going through a really hard time in my life. And I started reading a bunch of romance and discovered that romance is the perfect thing to read when life is difficult. Because going in, there's gonna be that happy ending. And like that's what you need in hard times, and it's not just a happy ending, like that a romance writer, if they introduce a puppy, nothing bad is going to happen to that puppy. You know it. And so, like, that is what I needed. And even when, sometimes, like, there's ups and downs, but I knew that, like, that end would be okay. And that was really necessary for me. And at first, I was reading a lot of historical romances, which I love. But because I had been writing before, but I hadn't written romance. When I started writing young adult. And so I was reading a lot of historical romance, and I thought, this is so much fun to read, but I don't think I could write one of these because I just think my voice wouldn't translate to historical. And then I started reading contemporary romance, and I was like, oh yeah, I want to do this. This seems fun.
That's exactly how I started. It was also, I was going through a really tough time, and I found that romance was the thing that got me through that really hard time. And then by the end of the year, I was like, I should try writing one. Yeah. But I also started reading historicals first. And it wasn't until I started reading a lot of historicals, because I wanted to kind of catch that warm fuzziness of Jane Austen, but in something more written more recently. Right? And then I discovered contemporaries, and then I discovered rom-coms. I'm like, ooh, funny and romantic.
This seems good.
Yeah. And then the same thing, when I came down to writing, I'm like, that's a lot of research, writing historicals. And of course, there's the whole colonialism, and how do I do that?
Yeah, see, this is the other thing.
The not nice things about history. It's kind of hard to navigate. So as a writer, now that you've kind of been in the game for a little bit, are you still romance? Or are you thinking about moving to other genres? Or
I could see myself writing other genres, but like in addition to romance, not instead of, right? I think, I still thank you. I still love young adult, and I can see myself writing that. Like, I read a lot of literary fiction. Maybe someday I would try that. I don't know. But I think like, I love writing romance so much because I had written other stuff before, and I remember when I first started writing The Wedding Date, I was just having so much fun. Like, it was just so fun to write, and I don't ever want to like kind of let go of that.
the fun of
Yeah,
romance.
yeah.
And the we can torture our characters as much as we want. We can have them like have these terrible meat disasters, and then at the end they're going to be happy.
Yeah.
And I want to keep giving that to people.
Right. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I don't want to torture people. I
Yeah.
want to give them a happy ending. Because these are real people, at least in my head.
Yeah, it is in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, when was it? A few years ago, I think it was like the Christmas time of 2020. I had just bought a Christmas tree and I was driving home with it. And I remember seeing like a new restaurant on the corner of this one place, and like is all of the books that I've read that are like set in the Bay Area, I know exactly where my characters live, and so this new restaurant was like right around the corner from where in my head Alexa from The Wedding Date lives, and I like drove by and I was like, oh, Alexa's gonna like that place, and I was like, she's not real. Not real. She's not gonna go to that pizza place. Not.
Which of your characters do you think, like, because of course they're real in our heads, which of your characters do you think you would be the closest friends with?
Oh, that's a great question. Probably Alexa and Maddie. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Any particular reason?
But I mean, I think I would get really good like clothing tips from them.
Yeah.
And Alexa and I would eat well together. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think all of your couples are still together? Of course they are. Absolutely. Somebody asked me that question. I'm like, are you nuts?
What kind of a question is that?
What kind of a question is that? Yeah. That's not to disparage the other gender, but men writing romance and then they're like, and then at the end they're not together.
No.
It's like, what?
No, that's not.
Or in the sequel they've been pulled apart. I'm like, no, no sequel.
This is it. This is why we don't have
Happily ever after.
Yeah, they're happy.
Yes, exactly. So what other genre are you thinking? You said YA, maybe?
Yeah, maybe YA.
Yeah.
You know, and I read a ton of mystery, but I don't know if I could write one. Like, I just don't know if I don't know if I could, you know, you have to have all these different pieces to put together. I don't know if I could do that. But it, you know, never say never, right? I think there are a lot of like things that I could, maybe someday I'll have the right idea for it.
Yeah, you're scaring me because I'm writing a mystery.
Oh, see, once you decide to do it, then you probably know you can do it.
Well, then I have to do it.
I can't wait to read it. I love reading mysteries.
So you did write a book based on a fairy tale, though.
I
The book
did.
was a Beauty and
Yeah.
the Beast retelling.
Yeah.
So how did that happen? Is the first question.
You know, Disney is doing this series of contemporary reimaginings of the princesses, and they came to me and were like, you know, my agent sent me an email like, do you like Disney princesses? I was like, yes, absolutely, I do. Like, I don't need to know the next question. And so I got to do reimagining of Beauty and the Beast because, you know, Belle obviously is like a delightful character because she loves books. There you go. But you know, the interesting thing is like I rewatched the movie shortly before I started writing, and I was like, oh, so that's really all there is to her character, huh? She likes books. All right, well, I'll have to come up with a little bit more.
She likes
Yeah.
books, and she has a weird relationship with her father.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she likes books. She's real attached to her dad. All right, let me work on that. Yeah.
And she's very judgmental about the people in town.
Yeah.
too.
I mean, look, they're eating like bread and cheese and butter.
Poor
Like
woman
that
is
was
just trying to get
delicious.
eggs to feed
I
her
know,
kids.
Right. Yeah. So there was a lot of contemporariness of Beauty and the Beast.
So why did you get to pick the book? I'm curious why you would
Yes.
do that. Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So
Yeah.
why you just because of her love of books?
And you know, it was like I thought it was funny because I hadn't really watched the movie in a long time, and I was like that feels like a fun one to update, right?
Yeah.
And Belle feels like a relatable character to me, you know. And then I watched the movie and I was like, oh, right, so he imprisons her. So I'll leave that part out. Maybe try to change this part of the romance.
That's the joy of doing a retelling like that, is we can kind of like smooth over all the problematic things. Would you do another retelling?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I love reading them, right? Like so many people, you know, have done like the Jane Austen ones.
Yeah.
I love Shakespeare. You know, people have done those, and I think they're so fun. So maybe someday.
Yeah. So there's nothing in the woodworks?
Nothing in the works. Yeah, but they sound really fun.
So The Wedding Date came out in 2018.
Yes.
And now Drunken Love is your 8th book.
Yes.
Which doesn't that feel like a lot?
Yes.
I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted just thinking of that many books in that many years. So if you could go back and have a drink with baby author Jasmine,
Oof.
what would you be saying to her?
Wow, that's a great question. Start an exercise plan early, partly just because there's so much. Now I try to make myself exercise as a anxiety release, and there's a lot of anxiety in publishing. Publishing is very there's no real timelines until there is. Right? And there's no real answer until there is. And I am not a person who deals well with uncertainty. So I think, early on, just investing in all of those things for mental health would have been real good for me, which I did not.
That's excellent
do.
advice, actually.
Yeah.
That's not what, I've asked this question to many authors, and I've never heard anyone say, protect your mental health
Yeah.
at the beginning.
Because just even... when I got the deal for The Wedding Date in October. Actually, now that I think about it, it was exactly today. It was October 3rd of 2016 was when my agent called to tell me I had the deal for The Wedding Date. But what I did, I was a lawyer, right? So in my mind, you get a deal and then you sign a contract soon afterwards. No, that's not how it happens in publishing. I did not sign the contract until, I think, April or May of the following year. We didn't announce the deal. We announced the deal the following January. But it was that happened in October, and then I heard nothing, right? Until January when it was time to announce it. And by Christmas, I stopped telling people about it because I was oh, obviously they've changed their mind, and nobody's going to tell me until after the holidays. So because you just they don't. Everything is a mystery. And then all of a sudden my agent was great, we're announcing it today. And I was what? We haven't signed a contract. Okay, we just don't sign contracts. There's so much uncertainty.
There's so much uncertainty,
And there are never any answers. I will send emails and they get lost in the void. And then, 3 weeks later, it's oh, we have an answer for you. Okay, thank you.
My agent told me, very early, with my first contract as well, she's I know you've been thinking that nothing has been happening, but behind the scenes we've been negotiating for the last however weeks. I'm
yes.
Well, you could have told me.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah, thank you for telling me that now.
And obviously I don't want, you were a lawyer, I don't want to be negotiating. I will leave
No,
that to
I'm glad
people.
someone else
That's
is
their
doing
job.
it, but
there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of being able to be adaptable and just kind of, okay, we're doing it this way now. Oh, okay, this is what's happening.
Yeah,
sure, okay. There's a lot of that. Yeah, and I wish I could tell myself that too, that just kind of roll with the punches.
Yeah.
Work your butt off and roll with the punches.
If I had told myself that, it wouldn't have mattered. I'm not a roll with the punches kind of person. I have had to learn how to do it, but I would have been sure, okay, I'll try that. I don't know how to do that. So, but yeah, I think that's been the hardest thing for me in publishing is that it's such a different world. You don't understand anything. You're just sort of plunged into nobody teach, and also there's no. Even people I know who have MFAs, it's not they teach you about publishing. That's just about writing, right? And so there's no education for this is how you be a published author. This is what to do with Instagram or whatever.
No, there's not.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
And so just sort of it will all turn out okay. But at the beginning you're just deer in the headlights.
And I don't even think people that do an MFA, they're not. They don't know.
No, they don't know that.
They don't know.
They actually know even less of that because they MFA programs are just we are just about writing. We're not about the business. The business is, and so there's no here's the business of publishing. This is what these words mean. So
what would you say if we were going back to talk to you as a baby author? What would you say the best things that will happen in your first 5 years of publishing?
I just wouldn't tell her about the pandemic. You don't, telling someone about that in advance would be terrible,
Yeah,
right? You
yeah,
don't
of
need
course.
to anticipate that. Really meeting readers has been so wonderful.
Yeah.
I didn't I didn't expect what people would say to me and how important it would feel to me. You know, people have told me that I said, how, reading romance got me through hard times. Having people tell me that reading my books got them through hard times has been incredible, because that's exactly what reading books has done for me, and it feels amazing that I could do that for anyone.
Yeah, it really is. That's my favorite thing too.
Yeah.
Just checking time. Okay. So we're going to do some rapid fire
All right.
for about 10 minutes, and then we'll open it up to questions. So red wine or white?
White.
White, like all the time, or depending on what you're eating?
No, I mean, unfortunately, I used to like red wine better, but now it gives me headaches. It's very sad. And also, I live in California. The weather is usually more white winey. Yeah, I know. Sorry about that.
Those of us in Toronto were like, we have red wine weather. We have red wine and a big
But
blanket
thank you for
weather.
bringing the white wine weather while I was in town. I really appreciate it. The weather's perfect.
Okay, eat in or go out?
Go out.
Go out, nice. I like that. Silk or cashmere?
Silk.
Silk.
Yeah.
This is also a California
Yeah,
answer.
exactly. Yeah, cashmere is usually a little too hot in it. Sorry.
So what's your favorite non-romance read this year?
Oh, that's a great question. I will probably give you more than one. I recently finished Killers of a Certain Age. It is a delightful book. It's so fun. It's a sort of mystery thriller, but not I often stay away from thrillers because they're usually a little too stressful for me. But this one was just a joy. It's about 4 women in their 60s who have been assassins for 40 years, and now their organization is coming after them, and so they have to save themselves. It is so fun. I loved every minute of reading.
Oh,
that
I've been
book.
wanting to read that one.
Yeah.
If you weren't a romance author, what would you be right now? Would you still
I guess
be
I'd still be a
lawyer?
lawyer. Oh, that sounds terrible. Well, sorry to any lawyers out there. Yeah, you do good work, but yeah, you're probably still a lawyer.
When you're writing, do you prefer silence or music?
Silence.
Silence.
Yeah, I always. I mean, sometimes I go to in the before times, I would go to cafes and stuff to write. And then having sort of the white noise of people behind me was fine. But if I'm at home, I only write in silence. Because usually if there's music with words in it, then I can't concentrate on what I'm writing. And then it's just easier to have silence.
Yeah. Do you prefer writing that first draft or editing?
Oh, probably editing. Writing the first draft is often a nightmare because my first drafts are way too long, super messy. I never know what I'm doing. I mean, I always start with an outline, but I still constantly feel like I never know what I'm doing. And editing, at least I have something, right? At least there's words in a computer, and they have a beginning, middle, and an end. They're not the correct words.
Yes.
There's lots of stuff that needs to be cut and changed and moved all around. But at least I feel okay, there's something here.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same way. And it's funny that I ask this question to authors, and most of us I think are team editing that they prefer. So I'm wondering how the hell we ever wrote that first book.
I don't know.
I don't know how we did it because somehow we got through the hellish part.
There are parts of writing a first draft that are fun, but when you towards the end, it just feels like agony because I'm because then I'm thinking of all of the stuff that I have to start changing. Whereas once I start changing it, then I feel okay, I'm getting somewhere. I know at least I have a plan here.
I feel like when you're a new author, though, when you haven't written more than one book, when you're working on your first one, you don't know how much you need to be changing.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel like, oh my God, there's so much more work to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel that way. You're just excited to be writing.
Yes, yeah.
and then you realize, that the work has
Yeah.
only just started. I'm the same way, though. I would much prefer editing any day. I had a friend that were like, next time we're just going to write each other's first
Yeah.
drafts.
And then swap, and then.
And then we'll edit it. So what's the nonfiction book that you want us all to go home and read right now?
One book that I loved, it's called The Warmth of Other Suns. This is obviously more for an American audience, but it is the story of the Great Migration from the South to like the North and West in the basically 30s and 40s, and it is totally fascinating. It tells the story of the history, but then it also interweaves the story of, I can't remember, it's 3 or 4 people who moved, from the South to different places. And so it is just really fascinating to hear. She interviewed them and like heard about their lives and how they got out, and like talked to some of their descendants and stuff. And then also told a lot of the history that like I grew up with this, but didn't know a lot of the history in the background. And like, I grew up with it because it is part of my history. Like my grandparents on both sides moved in the 30s and 40s from Louisiana to California. But I didn't kind of understand why or how or how it all happened. And it really was fascinating.
I find that fascinating.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating when a community of people migrate at the same time.
Yeah.
And what they bring with them and what kind of new traditions they...
Absolutely, yeah.
It's so interesting. I'm going to remember that one. Do you have any advice for aspiring authors that may be here today?
My biggest piece of advice is always just to read a lot. I think there's so much that I learned about, I didn't start writing for a very long time, but I have been a reader since I was very little. And I think there's so much that I learned about writing just from reading and knowing like what I liked and what I didn't, and what kind of books I reacted to, and what kind of had me like coming back for it. And so, and a lot of times, like when I first started writing, I would go back to books that I had loved and reread them to sort of see if I could figure out what it was that I loved about it. When I was figuring out how to write dialogue, I like would reread books that I felt like had really good dialogue so I could see what they did and how that was structured. Because a lot of times when you're first reading it, you're not thinking about that. And so I just read a lot of books, and I feel like there's a lot of other things to do too, but I think a lot of learning how to be a writer is reading.
Yeah. And I have one more question on my page.
Alrighty.
The most memorable thing about Toronto so far?
Oh, I had a very delicious dinner last night with a friend of mine from college that I really loved. And so that, obviously for me, it's going to be the food, right?
We have some great food here. What was the meal?
It was at Fat Pasha. It was delicious. Yeah.
What kind of food is that?
It's Middle Eastern.
Oh.
Yeah, it was great.
Ooh, yummy. I'm going to remember that. And that's it for my...